The story is not the event. Imagine that a police officer catches an armed bank robber in a dramatic shootout. The next day, we read about it in the newspapers. One particular newspaper may give a totally accurate account of what happened. It may have all the facts correct, the name of the police officer, the location of the bank, maybe even the precise number of shots fired. Another newspaper may give a less accurate account of what happened. It may exaggerate some of the details for the sake of the drama or just get the facts wrong. But whether the story is totally accurate or false and misleading, it's still just a story. And when we read that story, we aren't actually present at the event. There is no shooting actually taking place before our eyes. All we have in front of us are words and images. The only people who can truly experience this event are those people who are present when it happens, the eyewitnesses. Only an eyewitness actually hears the sound of the shots or sees the gun firing. No matter how detailed the description, the story is not the event, and vice versa. Of course, we know that newspaper stories are biased. They don't give us the absolute truth. They give us an angle of what happened, which reflects the editorial viewpoint and attitude of the newspaper. We also know that at any point we wish, we can stop reading. If we're not getting anything useful out the story, we can put down the newspaper and do something constructive. Now, this may be obvious when it comes to stories in newspapers, but it's not nearly so obvious when it comes to the stories in our minds. All too often, we react to our thoughts as if they are the absolute truth or as we must give them all of our attention. The psychological jargon for this reaction is fusion. What is fusion? Fusion means a blending or melding together. Think of two sheets of metal that are fused together. They are stuck to each other. You can't pull them apart. In ACT or ACT, we use the term fusion to mean that a thought and the thing it refers to, the story and the event, become stuck together as one. Thus, we react to words about a lemon as if a lemon is actually present. We react to words in a crime novel as if someone really is about to be murdered. We react to words like, I'm useless, as if we're actually useless. And we react to words like, oh, I'm going to fail, as if failure is a foregone conclusion. In a state of fusion, it seems as if thoughts of reality, what we're thinking, is actually happening here and now. Thoughts are the truth. We completely believe them. Thoughts are important. We take them seriously and give them our full attention. Thoughts are orders. We automatically obey them. Thoughts are wise. We assume they know best and we follow their advice. Thoughts can be threats. Some thoughts can be deeply disturbing or frightening, and we feel the need to get rid of them. Remember Michelle, who is plagued by thoughts such as, I'm hopeless, I'm a lousy mother, and nobody likes me. In a state of fusion, those thoughts seem to be gospel truth. As a result, she felt terrible. That's not surprising, you might think. With thoughts like that, anyone would feel upset. Certainly, that's what Michelle believed at first. But soon she discovered that she could instantly reduce the impact of such unpleasant thoughts by applying the simple technique described below. Read through the instructions first, then give it a try. I'm having the thought that. To begin this exercise, first bring your mind to an upsetting thought that takes the form I am X. For example, I'm not good enough or I'm incomplete. Preferably pick a thought that often recurs and usually bothers or upsets you. Now, focus on that thought and believe it as much as you can for 10 seconds. Next, take that thought and in front of it, insert this phrase. I am having the thought that. Play that thought again, but this time with the phrase attached. Think to yourself, I am having the thought that I am X. Notice what happens. Now do that again, but this time the phrase is slightly longer. I notice I'm having the thought that. Think to yourself. I notice I'm having the thought that I am X. Notice what happens. Did you do it? Remember, you can't learn to ride a bike just by reading about it or listening. You actually have to get on the bike and pedal. And you won't get much out of this book if you just read the exercises. To change the way you handle painful thoughts, you actually have to practice some new skills. So if you haven't done the exercise, please go back and do it now. So what happened? You probably found that inserting those phrases instantly gave you some distance from the actual thought, as if you stepped back from it. If you didn't notice any difference, try it again with another thought. You can use this technique with any unpleasant thought. For instance, if your mind says life sucks, then simply acknowledge, I'm having the thought that life sucks. If your mind says I'll fail, then simply acknowledge, I'm having the thought that I'll fail. Using this phrase means you're less likely to get beaten up or pushed around by your thoughts. Instead, you can step back and see those thoughts for what they are, nothing more than words passing through your head. We can call this process diffusion. In a state of fusion, thoughts seem to be the absolute truth and very important. But in a state of diffusion, we recognize that thoughts are merely sounds, words, stories, or bits of language. Thoughts may or may not be true. We don't automatically believe them. Thoughts may or may not be important. We pay attention only if they're helpful. Thoughts are definitely not orders. We certainly do not have to obey them. Thoughts may or may not be wise. We don't automatically follow their advice. Thoughts are never threats. Even the most painful or disturbing of thoughts does not represent a threat to us. In ACT or ACT, we have many different techniques to facilitate diffusion. Some of them may seem a bit gimmicky at first, but think of them like training wheels on a bicycle. Once you can ride the bike, you don't need them anymore. So try out each technique as we come to it and see which works best for you. Remember, as you use the techniques, the aim of diffusion is not to get rid of a thought, but simply to see it for what it is, just a string of words, and to let it be there without fighting it. The next technique calls on your musical abilities, but don't worry, no one will be listening except you. Musical thoughts. Bring to mind a negative judgment that commonly bothers you when it comes up. For example, I'm such an idiot. Now hold that thought in your mind and really believe it as much as you can for about 10 seconds. Notice how it affects you. Now, imagine taking the same thought and singing it to yourself to the tune of Happy Birthday. Sing it silently inside your head. Notice what happens. I am such an idiot. 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 Now go back to the thought in its original form. Once again, hold it in your mind and believe it as much as you can for about 10 seconds. Notice how it affects you. Now imagine taking that thought and singing it to the tune of Jingle Bells. Sing it silently inside your head. Notice what happens. I am such an idiot, I am such an idiot, I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot. After doing this exercise, you probably found that by now you're just not taking that thought quite so seriously. You're just not buying into it as much. Notice that you haven't challenged the thought at all. You haven't tried to get rid of it, debated whether it's true or false, or tried to replace it with a positive thought. So what has happened? Basically, you have diffused it by taking the thought and putting it into music. You have realized that it is just made up of words, like the lyrics of a song.